Water seeped through the cracks of the maintenance room door, rising inch by inch on the cold concrete floor. 5-year-old Lily huddled in the corner, her small body trembling not from the chill of the water, but from fear. Her blonde curls stuck to her pale face as tears mixed with the water droplets from the leaking ceiling. In her tiny hand, she clutched a worn photograph, its edges soft from years of handling. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the blaring fire alarm. "I know you can't hear me, but please save me." The digital clock on the wall blinked ominously. 30, 12, 29:59, 29:58. The emergency systems had activated the countdown, but no one knew Lily was trapped in this forgotten corner of the hospital's basement. Another coughing fit seized her small frame, the chronic lung condition making each breath a struggle as the water continued to rise. The photograph in her hand showed a smiling couple on a sunny day, the man's face obscured by a water stain. Lily pressed it to her chest as the water reached her ankles. "Please find me," she whispered to the faceless man in the photo. James Donovan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, overlooking the Boston skyline. At 55, he carried his years with the same confidence he carried his $3 billion empire. His silver hair, expertly cut, framed a face that graced business magazines and financial news channels. The founder and CEO of Pinnacle Tech commanded respect in every room he entered. But tonight, alone in his office, James Donovan was just a man haunted by memories. He loosened his tie, the silk sliding between his fingers as he walked to his desk. The office reflected his life, pristine, expensive, and utterly empty of warmth. He opened the bottom drawer and removed a silver frame, the glass catching the city lights as he tilted it toward him. Jennifer smiled back at him from the photograph, her eyes bright with life, unaware that 3 months after this picture was taken, a rainy road and a split-second decision would end everything. James traced the outline of her face with his finger, the platinum wedding band he still wore 6 years after her death catching the light. He took a sip of 30-year-old scotch, letting the amber liquid burn away the taste of loneliness. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the photograph, an apology for something deeper than her death, a secret regret that grew heavier with each passing year. Memory flashed behind his eyes, screeching tires on wet pavement, the sickening crunch of metal, a woman's furious voice, a child crying in the distance. He blinked hard, forcing the images away. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his ritual of remembrance. "Mr. Donovan, the board members are asking if you've reviewed the Axiom Industries acquisition proposal. They're pressing for an answer by tomorrow morning." James placed the frame back in the drawer before answering. "Tell them I'll have my decision at the 8 a.m. meeting." He gathered his coat and briefcase, preparing to return to his empty mansion on Beacon Hill. Another night alone with his wealth and regrets. Morning arrived with steel-gray clouds heavy with impending snow. James navigated his Bentley through Boston's crowded streets, his mind preoccupied with the hostile takeover threat looming over Pinnacle Tech. Axiom Industries had been circling for months, and now they were moving in for the kill, offering shareholders a premium that was becoming increasingly difficult to refuse. The traffic light turned red, and James drummed his fingers on the leather steering wheel. Through the windshield, fat snowflakes began to fall, dusting the street with white. That's when he saw her. A small girl, no more than 5 or 6 years old, stood on the sidewalk with a wooden crate full of oranges. She wore a threadbare red coat, several sizes too large, and a woolen hat pulled down over her ears. Even from a distance, James could see she was shivering. The light changed to green, but James didn't move. Something about the determination in the child's posture as she offered oranges to disinterested passers-by transfixed him. People hurried past, collars turned up against the snow, ignoring the small figure. A car horn blared behind him. James should have driven on. He had a critical meeting, a company to save, a legacy to protect. Yet he found himself pulling to the curb instead, an action so unlike him that he questioned his own motives as he set the parking brake. He stepped out into the falling snow, the cold air sharp in his lungs. As he approached, the girl looked up, revealing eyes the color of summer leaves, wide with both hope and apprehension at the approach of this tall man in an expensive overcoat. "Hello," James said, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Are you selling oranges?" The girl nodded. a cough shaking her small body before she could speak. Yes, sir, they're very sweet. $1 each or 5 for $4. Her business math was off, but her earnestness pierced something inside James that had been numb for years. How many do you have left? He asked. The girl counted quickly. 23 oranges, sir. I'll take them all, James said, reaching for his wallet. The girl's eyes widened in disbelief. All of them? Really? James nodded, extracting five $20 bills. He extended them toward the girl, who stared at the money as if it might disappear. This is too much, she said, her voice small but principled. My oranges only cost $23. James knelt down, bringing himself eye level with the child, snow gathering on his shoulders. Consider it a bonus for being out in this cold weather. What's your name? Lily, she answered, another cough rattling her chest. I'm James. Are you sick, Lily? You shouldn't be outside in this weather. Lily's small shoulders straightened with pride. I'm fine. I'm selling oranges to buy medicine for my mom. She's really sick and can't work. The simple declaration hit James with unexpected force. This child, barely old enough for kindergarten, was shouldering responsibilities that would crush most adults. Where is your mother now? He asked gently. At home, Lily said, tucking the money carefully into her coat pocket. She has bad lungs. The medicine costs a lot, and we don't have insurance since Mom can't work anymore. James made a decision that would alter the course of 3 lives forever. It's getting colder. Would you like to come warm up in my car? I have some hot chocolate in a thermos. Then perhaps I could drive you home. Normally, a child might be wary of such an offer from a stranger, but something in James's eyes, perhaps the genuine concern or a flicker of familiar kindness, made Lily nod in agreement. Okay, but I need to bring the oranges for you. Of course, James said, lifting the crate easily. Let's get you out of this snow. In the warmth of the Bentley, Lily's shivering gradually subsided as she sipped hot chocolate from the cup James had poured her. Her coughing, however, continued intermittently, each episode concerning James more than the last. How long have you had that cough? He asked. Lily shrugged, her small frame almost disappearing in the leather passenger seat. A long time. Mom has the same cough, but worse. She coughs up red stuff sometimes. Blood, James realized with alarm. The child's mother was coughing up blood. And your father? James asked carefully. Is he at home too? Lily's face clouded. I don't have a dad. Mom says he died in an accident before I was born. She doesn't like to talk about him. James nodded, an odd sensation settling in his chest. Where do you live, Lily? I should get you home to your mother. Lily hesitated, clearly torn between the warnings about not telling strangers where she lived and the trust this kind man had inspired. We live far, she finally said, in the old apartments on Meridian Street. But, she paused, looking down at her mittens, one of which had a hole at the fingertip. Maybe you could come to our place for tea? As a thank you for buying all my oranges? The invitation, delivered with such innocent formality, tugged at something long dormant in James. He should decline. He had the meeting, the company, responsibilities. I'd like that very much, he heard himself say instead. Lily smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. Good. Mom makes the best tea even when she's sick, and I can show you my drawings. James started the car, the meeting with the board already fading from his priorities. He sent a quick text to his assistant. Reschedule the 8 a.m. family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie, though he couldn't have explained why. Sarah Matthews lay on the threadbare couch, a thin blanket pulled up to her chin despite the apartment's stifling heat. The radiator clanked and hissed, fighting against the cold that seeped through the poorly insulated walls. At 27, illness had stolen her youth, leaving her face gaunt and her once vibrant brown hair limp around her shoulders. She glanced at the clock for the 10th time in as many minutes. Lily had been gone too long. She shouldn't have let her go out in this weather, shouldn't have allowed her 5-year-old to take on such adult responsibilities. But the medicine had run out yesterday, and the coughing had gotten worse. Bright spots of blood appearing on her handkerchief with increasing frequency. Sarah's gaze drifted to the battered shoebox on the highest shelf, visible only from her position on the couch. Inside lay the remnants of a life abandoned. Letters, a photograph, news clippings about a successful businessman. A life she'd fled from, taking her unborn child and the bitter secret that had driven her away. The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted her from her thoughts. Lily's distinctive skip, accompanied by heavier footfalls. A visitor? Panic fluttered in Sarah's chest. She struggled to sit up, smoothing her hair with trembling fingers. The door opened, and Lily burst in, cheeks flushed with excitement rather than fever for the first time in weeks. Mom, I sold all the oranges to one person, and he gave me $100. Now we can get your medicine and food and maybe even pay the heating bill. Sarah's relief at seeing her daughter quickly transformed into apprehension as a tall figure appeared in the doorway behind Lily. A man in an expensive coat, silver-haired, with a face she'd seen in her nightmares and dreams for 5 long years. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the edge of the couch to steady herself, blood rushing from her face. Mom, this is Mr. James. He bought all my oranges and gave me hot chocolate and drove me home because it's snowing, Lily announced proudly. James Donovan stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes locked on Sarah's face, recognition and shock etched in every line of his expression. Hello, Sarah, he said quietly, her name on his lips, sending a shiver down her spine. It's been a long time. Sarah couldn't breathe. The cough that had plagued her for months was nothing compared to the suffocating pressure now constricting her chest. How had he found her? Why now, after all these years? Lily, she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Go to your room for a few minutes. I need to talk to Mr. James alone. Lily looked between the adults, sensing the strange tension, but not understanding it. But Mom, I wanted to show him my drawings. Later, sweetheart, please. Reluctantly, Lily retreated to the small bedroom off the main living area, casting curious glances back at the visitor who had brought such a dramatic change to her mother's demeanor. When the bedroom door closed, Sarah struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. Why are you here? She demanded, voice stronger now, fueled by fear and protective instinct. James took a step forward, then stopped, respecting the invisible boundaries she'd erected. I had no idea, he said. I swear, Sarah, I just met Lily today, by complete coincidence. She was selling oranges in the snow. Sarah's eyes flashed. And now you know where we live. What do you want? Nothing, James ran a hand through his silver hair, discomposed in a way that business rivals would never believe possible. She was cold and sick. I couldn't leave her out there. We don't need your charity, Sarah said, chin lifting, despite her obvious weakness. Sarah, you're ill, seriously ill from what Lily says. Let me help you. A bitter laugh escaped her, triggering a coughing fit that bent her double. James rushed forward instinctively, but she held up a hand to stop him, fumbling for a tissue to catch the flecks of blood. Help me? Help me? She gasped when the coughing subsided. Like your mother helped me? By threatening to have me arrested for theft unless I disappeared? James's face went blank with shock. What are you talking about? Sarah stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she sank back onto the couch, suddenly too exhausted to maintain her defensive posture. You really don't know, she said flatly. Know what, Sarah? I've spent 6 years wondering why you disappeared without a word. One day we were planning our future, and the next, you were gone. No note, no call, nothing. Sarah closed her eyes, the weight of 6 years of secrets and struggle crushing down on her. Your mother came to my apartment that night with 2 security guards. She said she knew about the pregnancy. James staggered as if physically struck. Pregnancy, you were... Yes, Sarah whispered. I was going to tell you that weekend. I just found out myself. James sank into the threadbare armchair across from the couch, his world tilting on its axis. Lily, he breathed, the implications crashing over him like a tidal wave. Lily is my daughter. Sarah nodded, watching the truth dawn across his features, transforming him from the powerful CEO to a man confronting a reality he'd never imagined. Victoria said you'd never believe me if I told you about the baby. That you'd assume I got pregnant to trap you, to get your money. She said if I ever contacted you, she'd have me arrested for stealing jewelry from your house. James's hands clenched into fists. I never would have believed that of you. Never, and you didn't steal anything. Those were gifts. I know that, Sarah said, but I was 21, alone, pregnant, and terrified. Your mother is one of the most powerful women in Boston. When she threatened me, I believed her. So you ran. I tried to call you once, Sarah admitted, from the bus station. Victoria answered your phone. She told me you knew everything, that you agreed I should leave, that you were, her voice broke, relieved to be free of me. James closed his eyes, decades of manipulations by his mother suddenly clear in retrospect. I never got that call. I never knew about the baby. My God, Sarah, if I had known about Lily. You would have what? Sarah challenged, old pain flaring. Defied your mother, risked your position as heir to the Donovan fortune? We both know you wouldn't have chosen me over all that. James stood abruptly, pacing the small living room like a caged lion. I would have married you, he said fiercely. I would have chosen you and our child over everything else. That's why Victoria interfered, because she knew that. A heavy silence fell between them, 6 years of misunderstandings and separate suffering hanging in the air. The bedroom door creaked open, and Lily peered out, her green eyes, his eyes, James now realized, wide with concern. Mom, are you okay? I heard you coughing. Sarah managed a weak smile. I'm fine, sweetie. Just talking with Mr. James. Lily slipped out of the bedroom, a drawing clutched in her small hand. She approached James cautiously, offering the paper to buy him. I made this for you, as a thank you for buying my oranges. James took the drawing, his hand trembling slightly. A child's rendering of 3 figures holding hands. A tall man in a suit, a woman with brown hair, and between them a small girl with yellow curls. Above them, a bright sun shone, and at the bottom, in carefully formed letters, thank you for the hot chocolate. From Lily. James knelt to Lily's level, emotion constricting his throat. This is beautiful, Lily. Thank you. Lily beamed, then looked more closely at his face. Are you crying? Did I make you sad? James shook his head, unable to speak for a moment. This child, his child, had been living in poverty, selling oranges in the snow while he accumulated billions and mourned missed opportunities. No, he finally managed. I'm not sad. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're very happy. Lily accepted this explanation with the easy faith of childhood. Do you want to see my other drawings? I have lots. I would love that, James said, rising to his feet. He looked at Sarah over Lily's head, a silent question in his eyes. Sarah gave a small nod. Whatever lay between them, whatever pain and misunderstandings the past held, Lily deserved to know her father, and James deserved to know his daughter. Lily took James's hand without hesitation, leading him toward her bedroom, chattering about her art projects at school. James followed, his mind reeling. In the space of a morning, his world had transformed. The takeover threat to his company, the board meeting, the business empire he'd built, all seemed insignificant compared to the small hand holding his, the life he'd unknowingly helped create and then missed 5 years of. He would make it right. Somehow, he would make it right. After an hour with Lily, looking through her drawings and listening to her stories, James emerged from the bedroom to find Sarah in the kitchen, preparing tea with shaking hands. He moved to help her as another coughing fit doubled her over. Sarah, you need a doctor, he said, gently taking the kettle from her hands. No insurance, remember? She replied bitterly. And the free clinic has a 3-week waiting list. I'm taking you to Massachusetts General. Today, now. His tone brooked no argument. The best pulmonary specialist in the country is there, Dr. Peterson. He's a personal friend. Sarah leaned against the counter, too weak to maintain her defiance. And how would I pay for that? You wouldn't, James said simply. I would. I told you, we don't want your... It's not charity, James interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. It's my responsibility. Lily is my daughter, Sarah. My flesh and blood. And you are her mother. Let me do this, not for you, not even for me, but for her. Sarah looked toward the bedroom where Lily was organizing her art supplies, unaware of the life-changing conversation happening in the kitchen. She needs her mother, James pressed, and from what I've seen, you're an amazing one. Let me help you get well, please. Sarah's resistance crumbled under the weight of maternal love and physical exhaustion. She nodded once, a tear slipping down her cheek. Thank you, James said, relief evident in his voice. Pack what you need. I'll make some calls. As he reached for his phone, it rang in his hand. The caller ID showed his assistant's name. The board meeting, the takeover threat. Reality intruding. James Donovan, Mom, he answered, his voice automatically shifting to the authoritative tone he used in business. Mr. Donovan, the board is assembled and waiting. Mr. Harrington from Axiom Industries is here as well. They're demanding to know if you're accepting their offer. What should I tell them? James looked at Sarah at the shabby apartment, thought of Lily in her two large coats selling oranges in the snow. Tell them the meeting is postponed indefinitely due to a family emergency, he said. And Miranda, clear my schedule for the rest of the week. He ended the call before his assistant could question him further. Sarah was watching him, a question in her eyes. Work, he explained. Nothing that can't wait. She shook her head in disbelief. James Donovan postponing a meeting for a family emergency? The world must be ending. A small smile touched his lips. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just beginning. Lily emerged from her bedroom with a small backpack stuffed with her most precious possessions. Her drawings, a worn teddy bear, and a book of fairy tales. Mom says we're going to stay with you for a while, she announced to James, so you can help her get better. James nodded, still amazed at how naturally Lily had accepted him into her life. That's right, I have a friend who's a doctor, and he's going to look at your mom's lungs. Will he look at my lungs too? Lily asked. They hurt sometimes, like Mom's. Alarm flashed across James's face. Yes, he said firmly. He'll check you both out. As they prepared to leave, Lily stopped suddenly, running back to her room. She returned with the wooden crate of oranges. Don't forget these, she said earnestly. You paid for them. James felt a lump form in his throat. How about we leave them here? We can get more oranges later. Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. Okay, but I promise you'll get your oranges. I know I will, James said, helping Sarah with her coat. A deal is a deal, right? Lily giggled, the sound like sunshine breaking through clouds. Right. As they walked toward the door, Lily skipping ahead, Sarah suddenly froze, her face draining of color. Wait, she said. Victoria, what about your mother? The name cast a shadow over James's expression. My mother won't be a problem. You don't understand, Sarah insisted, her voice dropping to a whisper so Lily wouldn't hear. She's dangerous, James. She destroyed my life once. What's to stop her from doing it again? James took Sarah's hands in his eyes hard with determination. I won't let her hurt you or Lily, ever. I promise you that. Sarah searched his face, wanting desperately to believe him, but scarred by past betrayal. She'll find out. She always does. Let her, James said with quiet ferocity. I'm not the same man I was 6 years ago, Sarah. I don't need her approval anymore. I don't need her money. I have my own power now. A coughing fit prevented Sarah's reply, this one worse than before. James supported her weight as her body convulsed, fresh specks of blood appearing on her handkerchief. We need to go, he said urgently. Now. They made their way down the dilapidated stairs, James half carrying Sarah, while Lily hurried alongside, her face pinched with worry for her mother. Outside, the snow had intensified, blanketing the street in white. James helped Sarah into the back seat of the Bentley where she could lie down, then lifted Lily into the front passenger seat. Your car is really fancy, Lily observed as James started the engine. Are you rich? The innocent question brought a small smile to James's lips. Yes, I am. Is that okay? Lily considered this, her small brow furrowed in thought. I guess so, but Mom says rich people aren't always nice. Your mom is very wise, James said, glancing in the rearview mirror at Sarah, who had closed her eyes in exhaustion. Some rich people aren't nice at all, but I promise to try my very best to be both rich and nice. Deal? Deal, Lily agreed, settling into the leather seat with a contented sigh. As they drove through the snowy streets toward the hospital, James's phone rang again. This time the caller ID displayed Mother. He silenced it without answering. Aren't you going to talk to them? Lily asked curiously. Not right now, James replied. Right now, you and your mom are more important. Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense, then turned to look out the window at the falling snow. This is the best day ever, she declared. James glanced at the sick woman in his back seat, thought of the years lost and the challenges ahead, and yet found himself agreeing with Lily's assessment. Something fundamental had shifted within him. For the first time in 6 years, perhaps for the first time in his life, his priorities were crystal clear. The sleek black car continued through the snow, carrying its precious cargo toward a future none of them could have imagined that morning. Behind them, a dark SUV pulled away from the curb, following at a discreet distance, its driver speaking quietly into a phone. "Yes, Mrs. Donovan, I've located your son. He has the woman and a child with him. They appear to be heading toward Massachusetts General Hospital." In her elegant Beacon Hill home, Victoria Donovan ended the call, her manicured fingers drumming on her mahogany desk. So Sarah Matthews had resurfaced after all these years, and with a child. This complicated matters significantly. The Axiom Industries deal, the merger she had personally arranged to secure the Donovan legacy, was now threatened by this unwelcome ghost from the past. Victoria reached for her phone again, dialing a number she rarely used but kept for emergencies. "Richard, it's Victoria Donovan. We have a situation. The complication we discussed years ago has returned. Yes, that one. I need your help again." In the Bentley, unaware of the storm gathering behind them, James reached across to adjust the heater, his hand briefly covering Lily's smaller one where it rested on the seat between them. His daughter, the thought still stunned him, filled him with wonder and regret in equal measure. "We're almost there," he said softly. "Everything's going to be okay now." He believed it with his whole heart. He had to. The alternative was unthinkable. As they approached the hospital, the first flakes of snow turned to rain, drumming on the roof of the car like 1,000 tiny fingers. A cleansing rain, washing away the past and clearing the path forward. James Donovan, titan of industry, once thought he had everything. Now he realized he had had nothing that truly mattered. Until today. Until Lily. Until this second chance he'd never dreamed possible. He would not waste it. The pristine corridors of Massachusetts General Hospital formed a stark contrast to the grimy hallways of the apartment building they had left behind. James walked beside the gurney carrying Sarah, his hand occasionally brushing against hers as the medical team rushed them toward the emergency department. Lily trotted alongside, her small sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, eyes wide with worry and wonder. "VIP suite, doctor." "Peterson's orders," the nurse said, checking the tablet in her hand as they approached a set of double doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." James nodded, unsurprised. One phone call had been all it took. In his world, doors opened with the weight of his name alone. The Donovan name commanded attention, respect, and immediate action. But none of that power had helped him find Sarah 6 years ago. None of it had revealed the existence of his daughter. And none of it could guarantee that Sarah would survive what he now understood was advanced pulmonary disease. The medical team wheeled Sarah through the doors, but a nurse gently stopped Lily without a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, sweetie. You'll need to wait out here while the doctors examine your mom." Lily's face crumpled, her brave facade finally cracking. "But I want to stay with her." Her small voice quavered with fear. James knelt beside her, turning her to face him. "The doctors need space to help your mom, Lily. You and I will wait right here, and as soon as possible, we'll see her. I promise." Lily's eyes, so startlingly like his own, searched his face for reassurance. "You won't leave?" The question carried more weight than the child could know. It resonated with abandonment, with a lifetime of uncertainty. "I won't leave," James said firmly. "Not you, not your mother. Not ever again." Lily nodded solemnly and then reached for his hand. Her small fingers intertwined with his larger ones, a gesture of trust that tightened around his heart. They settled into the private waiting area, a space reserved for families of the hospital's most important patients. James watched as Lily explored the room, touching the leather chairs, the polished side tables, running her fingers over the fresh flowers and crystal vases. "Is this a special hospital for rich people?" she asked with a child's directness. James smiled despite the circumstances. "No, it's for everyone, but some parts are different." "Because you're important?" "Because I can pay for it," James corrected gently. "But your mom deserves the best care whether I was here or not." Lily considered this, then climbed onto the chair beside him. "Are you really rich like in the movies?" "Yes," James answered honestly. I built a company that makes computers and technology. It became very successful. Then why were you, Sim? Lily asked, catching him off guard. In your car, before you saw me, you looked really sad. Children saw more than adults gave them credit for. James hesitated, unsure how to answer, how much to reveal. I was lonely, Neve finally said. I have a big house and a lot of money, but I didn't have a family. Lily nodded with surprising understanding. Mom gets sad like that too. She says money can't buy happiness, but it sure could pay our heating bill. She giggled at what was clearly a quote she'd heard many times. James laughed softly, thinking how right Sarah was. His billions hadn't filled the emptiness in his life, but they could certainly ensure that Lily and Sarah never had to worry about basic necessities again. Mr. Donovan? A nurse appeared at the doorway. Dr. Peterson would like to speak with you. James stood, then hesitated, looking at Lily. I'll stay with her, the nurse offered, recognizing his dilemma. We have coloring books and tablets with games. I'll be right back, Lily, James promised, squeezing her hand once before following the nurse through the door. Dr. Michael Peterson waited in the hallway, his face grave beneath salt and pepper hair. Decades of friendship allowed James to read the concern in the doctor's expression immediately. How bad is it, Mike? Dr. Peterson sighed, flipping through charts on his tablet. Advanced pulmonary fibrosis, exacerbated by what appears to be years of untreated pneumonia. Severe malnutrition, anemia. Her immune system is severely compromised. James felt his stomach twist. Can you help her? She needs aggressive treatment. Antibiotics, steroids, possibly a lung transplant down the line if we can stabilize her. The doctor paused. James, I have to ask, this woman and child, who are they to you? The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. James glanced through the small window in the door, seeing Lily now sitting with the nurse, carefully coloring a picture. Sarah is someone I cared about deeply years ago, and Lily, he turned back to face his friend, Lily is my daughter. Dr. Peterson's eyebrows rose slightly. I see, does your mother know? The question confirmed what James had always suspected, that Michael, as a family friend, was well aware of Victoria Donovan's iron grip on her son's life. She will soon enough, James replied grimly. But that's not important now. Whatever Sarah needs, spare no expense. And I want Lily examined too. She has a cough that concerns me. The doctor nodded. I'll assign our top pediatric pulmonologist to see her right away. He hesitated, then added, James, Sarah is asking for you. James followed Dr. Peterson through a maze of corridors to a private room where Sarah lay surrounded by beeping machines, an oxygen mask covering her face. She looked even more fragile against the white hospital sheets, but her eyes were alert and tracked him as we entered. She pulled the mask aside. Where's Lily? She's safe, being well cared for in the waiting room, James assured her, moving to her bedside. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Sarah replied, her attempt at humor undermined by the weakness in her voice. Dr. Peterson says I've been walking around with a condition that should have had me hospitalized months ago. Why didn't you seek help sooner? James couldn't keep the accusation from his tone. Sarah's eyes flashed. You know exactly why. No money, no insurance, and the free clinic keeps telling me it's just bronchitis. She replaced the oxygen mask, taking several deep breaths before continuing. Besides, who would take care of Lily if I was hospitalized? The question hung between them, an indictment of his absence, of all the years he should have been there and wasn't. I'm sorry, James said simply. I should have been there, for both of you. Sarah's expression softened. You didn't know, I understand that now. A tentative truce settled between them, built on shared concern for their daughter and the gradual acceptance of truths long buried. Sarah, there's something else we need to discuss, James began carefully. My mother. The door swung open, interrupting him. A nurse entered with an apologetic smile. Excuse me, Mr. Donovan, your daughter is asking for you. She's becoming quite upset. Go, Sarah said immediately. Lily needs to see a familiar face. She gets anxious in new places. James nodded, realizing how little he knew about his own daughter, her fears, her likes and dislikes, the daily rhythms of her life. 5 years of fatherhood lost, condensed into a few hours of desperate catching up. He found Lily in the examination room, sitting on the edge of an exam table, tears streaming down her face as a pediatrician tried to coax her into allowing a stethoscope near her chest. "I want my mom," she cried, spotting James and reaching for him. James was at her side in 3 strides, lifting her into his arms without hesitation. "I'm here, Lily. The doctor just wants to listen to your lungs to make sure you are okay." "Is she going to hurt me?" Lily whispered against his neck. "No, sweetheart. It won't hurt at all." The term of endearment slipped out naturally, feeling right on his tongue. "Here, I'll show you. Doctor, may I?" The pediatrician handed James the stethoscope. He placed the earpieces in his own ears, then held the chest piece against Lily's stuffed bear. "Listen, he has a heartbeat," James said, offering the earpieces to Lily. Curiosity overcame fear. Lily put on the stethoscope and giggled when James pressed the chest piece against his own heart. "It's so loud." "That's because it's happy to see you," James replied, earning a smile that transformed Lily's tear-streaked face. The examination proceeded without further incident, James holding Lily's hand through blood draws and lung capacity tests that revealed what he had feared. Lily's lungs showed early signs of the same disease afflicting her mother. "We've caught it much earlier in Lily's case," the pediatrician assured him. "With proper treatment, she should make a full recovery." Relief washed over James, followed immediately by determination. He would ensure both Sarah and Lily received not just proper treatment, but the best care money could buy. As they left the examination room, James's phone vibrated in his pocket. He checked the screen, his assistant again. The board was in an uproar. Axiom Industries was threatening to withdraw their offer if he didn't appear personally within the hour. James silenced the phone. Let them withdraw. Let the company fall. Some things mattered more. "Are we going to see Mom now?" Lily asked, her hand still firmly in his. "Yes, but first." James guided her to a bench in the quiet hallway, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Lily, there's something important I need to tell you." Lily looked at him expectantly, her green eyes, his eyes wide and trusting. "I knew your mother a long time ago, before you were born. We cared about each other very much." Lily nodded, absorbing this with the simple acceptance of childhood. "Is that why you have her picture?" "Yes." James took a deep breath. "Lily, the reason I have your mother's picture, the reason I look like you, is because I'm your father." The words hung in the air between them. Lily's face remained unchanged for a long moment. Then her brow furrowed in confusion. "But Mom said my daddy died in an accident." "Your mother thought that was true," James explained gently. "She was told things that weren't true, and she was trying to protect you." Lily's eyes narrowed with the skepticism of a child who had grown up too quickly. "If you're my dad, why weren't you with us? Why didn't you help when Mom got sick?" The direct questions pierced James's heart. How could he explain the complex web of lies and manipulation that had separated him from his family in terms a 5-year-old could understand? "I didn't know about you, Lily," he said simply. "If I had known I had a daughter as wonderful as you, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. I would never have let you and your mom struggle alone." Lily studied his face, searching for truth with an intensity that belied her years. Finally, she asked, "Are you going to stay with us now?" "Yes," James promised without hesitation. "I'm going to take care of you and your mom from now on, if that's okay with you." Lily considered this for a long moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She carefully smoothed it out, revealing the drawing she had shown him earlier, the 3 figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. "I drew this every year on my birthday," she said quietly. "Mom said it was just pretend, but I always wanted it to be real." James felt tears prick his eyes. This child, his child, had been drawing her absent father into her life all along, creating on paper the family she longed for. "It can be real now," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I promise, Pum." Lily looked up at him, a cautious hope dawning in her eyes. Then, with the resilience of childhood, she accepted this new reality with astonishing grace. She stood and took his hand again. "Okay, Daddy," she said, testing the word. "Let's go see Mom." The simple word, Daddy, hit James with the force of a physical blow. Joy and regret mingled in his chest as he led his daughter back towards Sarah's room, their linked hands a bridge across the years of separation. They found Sarah asleep, the oxygen mask still covering her face, monitors beeping steadily beside her. Lily approached the bed cautiously, reaching out to touch her mother's hand. "Is she going to be okay?" she whispered to James. The doctors are doing everything they can, James answered truthfully. She's getting the best care possible. Lily nodded, accepting his words with the faith of a child who had never been given reason to doubt him. She settled into the chair beside Sarah's bed, her small legs dangling, watching her mother's chest rise and fall with each labored breath. James stepped into the hallway to check with Dr. Peterson on Sarah's condition, finding him at the nurse's station reviewing test results. The antibiotics are already helping, the doctor reported. Her oxygen levels are improving. But James, this isn't going to be a quick fix. She'll need weeks of hospitalization, possibly months of recovery. James nodded grimly. And the transplant you mentioned? We've placed her on the list, but finding a match takes time. And frankly, her condition needs to stabilize before surgery would even be an option. What about Lily? Much more promising. Her condition is in the early stages. Aggressive treatment now should prevent permanent damage. Dr. Peterson hesitated. There's something else you should know. Given the genetic component of this condition, we ran compatibility tests. James tensed. And? You're a potential donor match for Sarah. Not perfect, but close enough that it might work if we can't find a better option. The implications weren't lost on James. Lung transplants from living donors were rare and risky. The procedure would involve removing a portion of his lung to give to Sarah. Whatever she needs, James said without hesitation. Dr. Peterson smiled slightly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. For now, focus on getting her stabilized. James turned to go back to Sarah's room when his phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't his assistant, but a name that made his jaw tighten. Mother. After 6 ignored calls, Victoria Donovan had clearly run out of patience. James knew he couldn't avoid this confrontation forever, but he wanted it on his terms, not hers. I need to step out for a bit, he told the nurse. Please inform Miss Matthews when she wakes that I'll be back soon, and make sure Lily has everything she needs. The nurse nodded. Of course, Mr. Donovan. James took the elevator to the hospital lobby, stepping outside into the cold air. The snow had stopped, leaving the city blanketed in white. He pulled out his phone and returned his mother's call. Victoria answered on the first ring. James, where on earth have you been? The board is in chaos. Axiom is threatening to pull out. Your entire company is at risk, and you disappear for some family emergency? The controlled fury in her voice was familiar. Victoria Donovan never shouted. Her anger came in precise, cutting words, delivered with the chill of an Arctic wind. Hello, Mother, James replied calmly. We need to talk, in person. I'll be at your house in 30 minutes. Without waiting for a response, he ended the call and signaled for his driver, who had been waiting in the hospital parking lot. The ride to Beacon Hill passed in tense silence. James stared out the window at the snow-covered streets, planning his approach. Direct confrontation had never worked with Victoria. She was too skilled at deflection, at turning accusations back on the accuser. But this time, James had leverage she couldn't ignore or manipulate. Her own actions, exposed after 6 years of secrecy. Victoria's mansion loomed ahead, a Georgian colonial that had been in the Donovan family for generations. Unlike James's modern penthouse, Victoria's home was a museum of old money, filled with antiques and family heirlooms, a physical manifestation of the dynasty she had worked so hard to protect. The housekeeper admitted him with a deferential nod. Mrs. Donovan is in the study, sir. James traversed the marble-floored hallway, past portraits of Donovan ancestors who gazed down with the same steel-eyed determination that had built railroads, banks, and eventually the tech empire James now controlled. Victoria stood by the fireplace, a tumbler of scotch in one manicured hand, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. At 68, she remained a formidable presence, her posture military straight, her gaze shrewd and assessing. James, she said by way of greeting, I trust whatever emergency pulled you away has been resolved. James closed the study door behind him. Not resolved, Mother, discovered. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, a momentary uncertainty quickly masked by practiced composure. I'm afraid I don't understand. I think you do. James approached slowly, maintaining eye contact. Sarah Matthews, the woman you threatened and drove away 6 years ago, the woman who was pregnant with my child when you forced her to disappear. Victoria's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened around her glass. I see she's found you at last. How much is she asking for? The casual cruelty of the question ignited James's carefully controlled anger. She didn't find me. I found her by complete coincidence. And do you know where? Selling oranges on a street corner to buy medicine for her dying mother. Now Victoria's composure slipped, genuine surprise crossing her features. Surely you don't believe my daughter, mother, James interrupted, his voice rising despite his efforts to remain calm. My 5-year-old daughter has been living in poverty, in a freezing apartment, watching her mother slowly die because they couldn't afford proper medical care, while I lived in luxury, oblivious to her existence. Victoria set down her glass with a sharp click. If Sarah Matthews chose to keep the child, that was her decision. I merely suggested she consider her options. Suggested? James laughed bitterly. By threatening to have her arrested for theft? By telling her I wanted nothing to do with her or the baby? Those weren't suggestions, Mother. They were threats and lies. For the first time in his adult life, James saw uncertainty in his mother's eyes. Victoria Donovan, the woman who had controlled every aspect of the family empire since his father's death, was finally on the defensive. I did what I thought was best for you, she said, her voice hardening. She was using you, James, a pretty face from the wrong side of town, looking for a meal ticket. When she got pregnant, James interrupted, she was carrying my child, a child I would have welcomed, a child I had every right to know about. Victoria's chin lifted. You were 29, on the verge of taking over as CEO. The board would never have accepted you with a pregnant cocktail waitress on your arm. Sarah was an art student, James corrected icily, and I didn't care what the board thought. I loved her. Love, Victoria scoffed. What does love matter against the legacy your father built? Against the responsibility to the Donovan name? What does legacy matter compared to family? James countered. Real family, Mother, not the dynasty you're so obsessed with preserving. And they stood facing each other, the physical resemblance between mother and son evident in their identical, stubborn expressions, their matching, steel-gray eyes. What do you want from me, James? Victoria finally asked. The truth. All of it. Who else was involved in driving Sarah away? Who helped you track her down? Who have you been speaking with today? Victoria's eyes widened slightly. You've had me followed. I have resources too, Mother. Now answer the question. Victoria moved to the window, gazing out at the snow-covered garden. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. Richard Mason. The name hit James like a physical blow. Richard Mason had been his father's business partner before James forced him out of the company after discovering financial improprieties. Mason? James shook his head in disbelief. You aligned yourself with the man who tried to steal from our company? Richard was loyal to your father for 30 years, Victoria replied. You were too hasty in your judgment, too unwilling to listen. He was embezzling funds. He was borrowing against future earnings, Victoria corrected, a practice your father permitted many times. But you, with your rigid ethics, couldn't see the nuance. James struggled to process this revelation. So you and Mason conspired to remove Sarah from my life as, what, revenge for me ousting him? Initially, yes, Victoria admitted, turning back to face him. Richard suggested that separating you from the girl would serve two purposes: protect the company from scandal and teach you a lesson about the consequences of your actions. My actions? James's voice rose in disbelief. I protected our company from a thief. You destroyed a man's reputation without understanding the full context, Victoria retorted. Richard lost everything, his position, his social standing, eventually his marriage. All because you couldn't be bothered to investigate more thoroughly before making accusations. James stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not just as the formidable Victoria Donovan, family matriarch, but as a woman capable of devastating cruelty in service to her warped sense of justice. So this was revenge, he said flatly. Victoria sighed, suddenly looking her age. It began that way, but then the girl actually left. She disappeared so thoroughly that neither Richard nor I could find her. We expected her to contact you anyway, to expose our threats, but she never did. She just vanished. With my unborn child, James added quietly, a child you knew about and deliberately kept from me for 5 years. Victoria had the grace to look away. I never expected her to keep the baby. Most girls in her position wouldn't have. Her name is Lily, James said, his voice hard. Your granddaughter's name is Lily. She has my eyes and your chin, and she's been selling oranges on street corners because her mother is too sick to work. A flicker of something, perhaps genuine regret, crossed Victoria's face. I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did? Victoria didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice held a note James had rarely heard from her. Uncertainty. I don't know, perhaps. James moved closer, forcing her to meet his gaze. Well, now you do know. Sarah is gravely ill. Lily needs her mother, and I will do everything in my power to save them both. Victoria studied him, seeing the immovable determination in his expression. The board won't wait forever, James. The Axiom deal? I don't give a damn about the Axiom deal, James cut her off. If the board wants to replace me, let them. Some things matter more than business. Victoria's eyebrows rose. You would walk away from everything your father built? Everything you've built? For my daughter? In a heartbeat. Mother and son regarded each other across a gulf of understanding that had never been wider. James saw in Victoria a woman so consumed by legacy and status that she had lost sight of the human cost of her ambitions. Victoria saw in James a man she no longer recognized, or perhaps had never truly known. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now I'm going back to the hospital to be with my family, James replied. As for you, stay away from Sarah and Lily. If you ever try to interfere in their lives again, if you ever attempt to manipulate or threaten them, you will lose me forever. Do you understand? Victoria nodded once, her expression unreadable. Perfectly. James turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Who is Richard in contact with at Massachusetts General? Victoria's eyes widened slightly. What makes you think? Don't, James interrupted. No more games, Mother. Mason was on the hospital board for years. He still has connections there. Is he monitoring Sarah's condition? Planning something? After a long moment, Victoria nodded. Dr. Levinson in pulmonary. He owes Richard several favors. James's jaw tightened. Thank you for your honesty. Finally. He left without another word, the heavy door closing behind him with the finality of a chapter ending. In the hallway, he immediately called Dr. Peterson. Mike, I need you to personally oversee all of Sarah's care. No one else, especially not Levinson. And I want security outside her door, effective immediately. James, what's going on? I'll explain later. Just do it, please. As James's driver navigated back toward the hospital, snow began to fall again, heavier this time. James stared out at the white-blanketed city, his mind racing with the implications of what he'd learned. Richard Mason, the man James had exposed and ousted 6 years ago, the man who had lost everything as a result, the man who apparently harbored enough hatred to help Victoria destroy James's chance at happiness. And now that man knew about Lily. James's phone rang, an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. James Donovan, he said tersely. Hello, James. The voice was smooth, cultured, and instantly recognizable. It's been a long time. James's grip on the phone tightened. Richard, I understand congratulations are in order. Fatherhood suits you, I hear. The casual reference to Lily sent a chill down James's spine. What do you want, Mason? A soft chuckle came through the line. Always direct, aren't you? Very well. I want what you took from me. My reputation, my position, my life. That's not possible, James replied coldly. No, a public statement admitting you were wrong about me would be a start. Reinstatement to the board would be better. A controlling interest in the company would be ideal. James nearly laughed at the audacity. You're delusional if you think I'd give you anything. Not even to protect that lovely little family you've just discovered? Mason's voice hardened. Sarah looks quite ill, doesn't she? Lung disease is so unpredictable. One day you're stable, the next, respiratory failure. Ice formed in James's veins. If you go anywhere near them, you'll what? Mason interrupted smoothly. Call the police? On what grounds? I haven't done anything yet, but I could. Or I could simply watch and wait. After all, your daughter has the same genetic predisposition to pulmonary issues as her mother. Tragic, really. James fought to keep his voice steady. What exactly are you proposing, Richard? A simple exchange. Your public declaration of my innocence, my reinstatement to the board, and a suitable financial settlement in exchange for your family's continued good health. You're threatening a 5-year-old child, James said, disbelief coloring his tone. Have you completely lost your humanity? I lost everything that made me human the day you destroyed me, Mason replied, his voice suddenly harsh. My wife couldn't handle the shame. She left me. My son refused to speak to me. I lost my home, my friends, my purpose. So yes, James, I would threaten a child. Your child, specifically. Poetic justice, wouldn't you say? James's mind raced, searching for a solution, a way to protect Lily and Sarah without capitulating to blackmail. I need time to consider, he stalled. Of course, Mason agreed, his voice returning to its cultured calm. Take 24 hours, no more. And James, don't bother trying to move them to another hospital. I have eyes everywhere. The line went dead. James sat motionless, the phone still pressed to his ear, as the magnitude of the threat settled over him. Mason wasn't bluffing. A man with nothing left to lose rarely did. The car pulled up to the hospital entrance. James stepped out into the falling snow, his decision already made. He would protect his family at any cost, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. Inside, he found Lily asleep in the chair beside Sarah's bed, her small body curled awkwardly against the armrest. Sarah was awake, watching their daughter with a tenderness that squeezed James's heart. She looked up as he entered, immediately sensing his tension. What's wrong? James forced a reassuring smile. Nothing. How are you feeling? Better, Sarah replied, clearly not believing him. The oxygen helps. James, where did you go? To see my mother, he admitted, moving to lift Lily gently from the uncomfortable chair. He settled her on the small sofa against the wall, covering her with a blanket before returning to Sarah's bedside. And? Sarah prompted. James sighed, sinking into the chair Lily had vacated. She admitted everything. The threats, the leases. All of it. Sarah's eyes widened. Just like that? After 6 years? Not exactly just like that, James said with a grim smile. But yes, she confessed, and there's more. He hesitated, unsure how much to reveal about Mason's threats. Sarah reached for his hand. Tell me. James looked down at their joined hands, her small, pale fingers intertwined with his larger ones. The same trust Lily had shown him, now mirrored in her mother. Richard Mason was involved, he began, explaining his history with the former executive, Victoria's collaboration, and finally the threatening call he'd just received. Sarah's face paled as he spoke. He threatened Lily? Our daughter? The fierce protectiveness in her voice, the automatic inclusion of James in our daughter, warmed him despite the gravity of the situation. Yes, James confirmed, but I won't let him hurt either of you, I promise. Sarah squeezed his hand. What are you going to do? James met her gaze steadily. Whatever I have to. In the dim light of the hospital room, with Lily sleeping peacefully nearby, James Donovan made a silent vow. He would protect his newfound family at all costs, even if it meant facing the demons of his past, even if it meant losing everything else he had built. For the first time in his life, James understood what truly mattered. Not wealth, not power, not the Donovan legacy. Just this, the small, fierce love of family, a love worth fighting for, worth dying for, if necessary. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in silence, while inside the hospital room, 3 lives hung in precarious balance, their futures intertwined in ways none could have imagined just 24 hours before. Get some rest, James told Sarah, gently tucking the blanket around her shoulders. I'll be right here when you wake up. Sarah's eyes, heavy with medication, drifted closed. Promise? I promise, James whispered, knowing that this time it was a promise he would keep no matter what the cost. As Sarah slipped into sleep, James settled back in the chair between her bed and the sofa where Lily lay. From this position, he could watch over both of them, his guardian vigil a poor substitute for the years of protection he should have provided. His phone vibrated with a text message. He checked the screen. 24 hours, James, tick-tock. James deleted the message, his resolve hardening. Mason thought he was threatening a broken man, a corporate drone who would sacrifice anything to preserve his company and reputation. He didn't realize that James Donovan had just discovered what he was truly willing to fight for, and it wasn't pinnacle tech. Let the countdown begin, James thought grimly. Richard Mason was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating a father's love. In her sleep, Lily murmured something, her small face momentarily creasing with concern before smoothing out again. James reached over to brush a strand of hair from her forehead, marveling at the miracle of her existence. His daughter, his flesh and blood, a gift he hadn't known existed until today. No, he wouldn't let Mason harm them. Not now, not ever. Outside the window, the first light of dawn began to push back the darkness, painting the snow-covered city in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning, and for James Donovan, a new purpose. Dawn's pale light filtered through the hospital window, casting long shadows across the room where James had kept his vigil through the night. He checked his watch, 18 hours left before Mason's deadline. 18 hours to find a way to protect his newfound family without surrendering to blackmail. Sarah stirred, her eyes fluttering open. The oxygen mask had been replaced with a nasal cannula during the night, a small but significant sign of improvement. Her gaze found James immediately, surprise registering that he was still there, in the same chair where she'd last seen him. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice rough from sleep. "I promised I would," James replied, the simplicity of his words carrying the weight of a vow. Sarah's eyes drifted to the small sofa where Lily slept, curled beneath a hospital blanket, her blonde curls splayed across the pillow. "Has she been asleep all night?" "Yes, the doctors say it's good for her. Her body needs the rest to heal." Sarah nodded, then studied James more carefully. The circles under his eyes, the stubble on his normally clean-shaven face, the rumpled shirt that had clearly been worn too long. "You look terrible," she said with a ghost of a smile. James chuckled softly. "Always the charmer, Sarah." For a moment, they might have been back in time before the separation, before the years of hardship and loneliness. The easy banter between them had survived somehow, buried beneath layers of pain but not destroyed. "James," Sarah said, her expression growing serious. "About Mason. What are you going to do?" Before he could answer, a soft knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Peterson entered, tablet in hand, his face grave. "Good morning, Tim," he said, his voice low to avoid waking Lily. "Sarah, how are you feeling?" "Better," she replied. "The pain is less." Dr. Peterson nodded, checking the monitors. "Your oxygen levels have improved, and the antibiotics seem to be working, but—" He hesitated, glancing at James. "Whatever it is, you can say it in front of both of us," Sarah said firmly. The doctor sighed. "We've received your latest scan results. The damage to your lungs is more extensive than we initially thought. The right lower lobe shows significant fibrosis that won't respond to medication." James felt his stomach tighten. What does that mean? It means the transplant isn't just a future possibility. It's a necessity, and sooner rather than later. The weight of those words settled over the room. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news with the stoicism of someone who had faced too many hard truths alone. "How soon?" she asked quietly. "Ideally within the next few months. We've moved you to the top of the regional list, but finding a match could take time." Dr. Peterson turned to James. "Which brings me to the other option we discussed." Sarah looked between them. "What other option?" James took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "I'm a partial match. I could be a living donor." Sarah's eyes widened. "What? No, James, that's too risky." "I can, and I will if necessary," he interrupted gently. "But for now, let's focus on getting you stronger for whatever procedure lies ahead." After Dr. Peterson left to check on another patient, James stepped into the hallway to make a series of calls. First to his head of security, a former FBI agent named Frank Mercer. "Frank, I need a complete background investigation on Richard Mason. Everything from the past 6 years, financial records, travel, associates, vulnerabilities, and I need it within 6 hours." "That's pushing it, even for my team," Frank replied. "But we'll get it done. What's this about, boss?" Protection, James said simply, for my family. The next call was to his attorney, Margaret Chen, one of the most formidable legal minds in Boston. Margaret, I need you to prepare two documents immediately. First, a temporary amendment to my will, naming Sarah Matthews and Lily Matthews as my primary beneficiaries. Second, a press statement regarding Richard Mason and the circumstances of his departure from Pinnacle Tech 6 years ago. What exactly do you want the statement to say? Margaret asked cautiously. The truth, James replied, that Mason was terminated for financial improprieties, but that the board, on my recommendation, chose not to pursue criminal charges out of respect for his long service to the company. Make it clear that the evidence against him was conclusive and is still retained in company records. James, Margaret's voice lowered, that sounds like you're preparing for something drastic. Just covering all bases, I'll need both documents by noon. His final call was to Miranda, his executive assistant. Miranda, I need you to convene an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Virtual attendance is fine. The board won't wait, Mr. Donovan. They're demanding answers about the Axiom deal now. They'll get their answers tomorrow, James assured her. Also, clear my calendar for the next month. Family emergency. When James returned to the room, he found Sarah watching Lily sleep, her eyes full of a mother's fierce love. She turned to him, intuition sharpening her gaze. You're planning something, she said. It wasn't a question. James nodded, sitting on the edge of her bed. Mason wants me to publicly exonerate him, restore his reputation, and give him a controlling interest in my company. In exchange, he promises not to harm you or Lily. Sarah's face paled. And if you refuse? That's not an option, James said grimly. Neither is giving in to his demands. So I'm creating a third option. Which is? James leaned forward, lowering his voice. I'm going to give Mason exactly what he wants, a public statement about his departure from Pinnacle Tech. Just not the statement he's hoping for. Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. You're going to expose him completely. The financial records he falsified, the money he embezzled, everything with documentation that's been sealed in company archives for 6 years. Won't that just make him more dangerous? James shook his head. Not if I time it right. Not if I can prove he's been threatening you and Lily. Sarah studied him, seeing the determination in his eyes. And your mother, what about her role in all this? The question gave James pause. Victoria's betrayal cut deeper than Mason's threats, precisely because it came from family, from the woman who should have protected his happiness rather than destroying it. One battle at a time, he finally said. Right now, Mason is the immediate threat. After breakfast, nurses arrived to move Sarah to a new room on the cardiac floor, away from the pulmonary unit where Dr. Levinson, Mason's contact in the hospital, held sway. James carried Lily, who was delighted by what she called their secret mission, taking service elevators and back corridors to avoid main hospital throughways. The new room had a view of the snow-covered hospital gardens. 2 security guards were stationed outside, their presence unobtrusive but reassuring. Mid-morning, James's phone vibrated with a text from Frank Mercer. Preliminary findings on Mason ready, significant development. I need to step out for a moment, James told Sarah. Security will be right outside. In the hallway, James called his head of security, keeping his voice low. What have you found? Mason's been busy these past 6 years, Frank replied. After his divorce, he liquidated most of his remaining assets and moved the money offshore. He's been living modestly in a condo in Cambridge, but his financial activities suggest he's been paying various medical professionals for information. Dr. Levinson, James guessed, him and others. But here's the key finding. Mason's son, Timothy, committed suicide 3 years ago. The police report indicates he had been struggling with depression following his father's disgrace. The information landed like a physical blow. Mason had lost not just his position and marriage, but his son as well. No wonder his vendetta had escalated to such extremes. There's more, Frank continued. Mason was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. Stage 4, he's refused treatment. According to his medical records, he has perhaps 3 months left. James leaned against the wall, processing this revelation. Mason wasn't just desperate, he was dying. A man with nothing left to lose. One last thing, Frank added. Mason purchased a handgun 2 weeks ago, legally registered. He picked it up yesterday. Double the security detail, James ordered. And Frank, find Mason. I want to know where he is right now. As James turned to re-enter the room, the elevator at the end of the hallway opened. He froze, his blood turning to ice as Richard Mason stepped out. Mason hadn't seen him yet. He was speaking to a hospital orderly, showing what appeared to be identification. Even from a distance, James could see the changes 6 years had wrought. Mason was thinner, his once robust frame gaunt, his skin pallid. The evidence of his illness was unmistakable. James ducked into an adjacent corridor before Mason could spot him. Before he could call security, another figure emerged from the stairwell, Victoria Donovan, her silver hair immaculately styled, her posture rigid as she approached Mason. James edged closer, straining to hear their conversation. "This wasn't the plan, Richard," Victoria was saying, her voice tight with controlled anger. "You promised you would wait." "Plans change," Mason replied dismissively. "I don't have the luxury of time, Victoria." "Threatening a child was never part of our agreement," Victoria hissed. "I wanted to separate James from that woman, yes. But this is madness, Richard." Mason laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "Madness? Perhaps. But it's the madness you helped create, my dear. You can't wash your hands of it now." Victoria's face hardened. "I'm putting a stop to this. I've already spoken to hospital security." Mason's hand moved to his jacket pocket, resting there with unmistakable intent. "Do you think I care about security at this point? I have nothing left to lose, Victoria. Nothing. Your son took everything from me. And now, before I leave this world, I'm going to take everything from him." The raw hatred in Mason's voice sent a chill down James's spine. This wasn't a man who could be reasoned with or bought off. This was a man consumed by vengeance, willing to die in its pursuit. Victoria took a step back, fear finally registering in her expression. "Richard, think about what you're doing. Think about Timothy. Would he want—" "Don't you dare speak my son's name," Mason snarled, his cultured veneer cracking completely. "He's dead because of your son, because the Donovan name destroyed the Mason name." Victoria's eyes darted around, seeking an escape route. "Richard, please." "There is no other way," Mason interrupted, his hand emerging from his pocket with the gun. "Now you're going to take me to Sarah Matthews and the child, or you're going to be the first casualty of the day." James stepped out from his hiding place. "That's enough, Richard." Mason spun toward him, the gun now pointed at James's chest. A twisted smile spread across his gaunt face. "James Donovan, how convenient. I was just about to go looking for your little family." "Let my mother go," James said calmly, his eyes never leaving Mason's. "This is between you and me." Victoria stood frozen, her normally impassive face a mask of terror. "James, he has a gun." "I'm perfectly rational," Mason said, the weapon unwavering in his grip. "I simply have nothing left to lose. Your son, on the other hand," he gestured with the gun, "he has everything to lose. A beautiful daughter, a woman he loves, a company, a future." James took a careful step forward. "You're dying, Richard. Frank found your medical records. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. A flicker of surprise crossed Mason's face, quickly replaced by grim amusement. "Yes, I'm dying. All the more reason to finish this business quickly." "And what exactly is this business?" James asked, taking another small step. "Killing a 5-year-old girl? Murdering her mother? How does that restore your reputation or bring back your son?" Pain flashed in Mason's eyes at the mention of his son. "It ensures you suffer as I have suffered. It ensures you live the rest of your life knowing you couldn't protect them, just as I couldn't protect Timothy." "Timothy's death wasn't my fault," James said quietly. "And it wasn't yours either. Depression is a disease, Richard, just like the cancer that's killing you." "Don't you dare pretend to understand," Mason spat. "You took everything from me. The cascade of losses that followed, my marriage, my home, eventually my son, all began with your accusations." "Accusations that were true," James countered. "You embezzled company funds. You falsified records." "I borrowed," Mason roared, the gun shaking in his hand. "Temporary measures during a difficult time. I would have replaced every penny." Perhaps, James conceded, taking another careful step. He was now between Mason and the corridor leading to Sarah's room. But that doesn't justify threatening innocent lives now. Lily is 5 years old, Richard. The same age Timothy was when we first met. Would you really harm a child to punish her father? The comparison landed visibly, Mason's expression faltering. Victoria, seizing the opportunity, edged away toward the stairwell. Stay where you are, Mason snapped, swinging the gun toward her. In that split second of distraction, James lunged forward, grasping Mason's wrist and forcing the gun upward. The weapon discharged, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling as the two men grappled. Despite his illness, Mason fought with the desperate strength of a man with nothing to lose. James felt the tremors running through Mason's emaciated frame, the weakness beneath the adrenaline-fueled fury. "Stop this, Richard," James gasped, maintaining his grip on Mason's wrist. "It's over." "It's not over until I say it's over," Mason snarled. But his strength was failing. The gun slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Victoria darted forward, kicking the weapon away as hospital security finally arrived, alerted by the gunshot. They tackled Mason to the ground, subduing him as he continued to struggle weakly. "Mr. Donovan, are you injured?" one of the guards asked, helping James to his feet. James shook his head, his eyes still on Mason as the guards handcuffed him. The fight had gone out of the older man, leaving behind only exhaustion and defeat. "Why, James?" Mason asked quietly as they lifted him. "Why couldn't you have just shown mercy 6 years ago? A private reprimand, a quiet retirement. Was your precious ethical code worth all this?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable in its simplicity and complexity. Before James could respond, the elevator doors opened again, disgorging a team of police officers who took custody of Mason from hospital security. As they led him away, Mason looked back once, his eyes meeting James's with a mix of hatred and something else. Perhaps a grudging acknowledgement that this particular battle was over. Victoria approached James, her normally perfect composure shattered. "I had no idea he would go this far," she said, her voice trembling. "I came to warn you." "You helped create this situation," James interrupted coldly. "You set these events in motion 6 years ago when you threatened Sarah and separated me from my child." Victoria flinched but didn't deny it. For the first time, James saw genuine remorse in his mother's eyes. "You're right," she said quietly, surprising him. "I was so focused on preserving what I thought was important, the company, the Donovan name, your position, that I lost sight of what truly matters." She looked down at her hands, which were trembling slightly. "When Richard told me his plans, I realized I was about to lose something far more precious than a business empire. I was about to lose my son, and a granddaughter I've never even met." James studied his mother, searching for any sign of manipulation. Finding none, he felt his anger soften slightly. Not enough for forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps enough to leave the door open for the possibility. "Go home, Mother," he said finally. "We'll talk about this later." Victoria nodded, straightening her shoulders with a hint of her usual composure. "For what it's worth, James, I am truly sorry." As she walked away, James felt a complex mix of emotions churning within him. Then he turned and hurried back to Sarah's room, needing to see with his own eyes that she and Lily were safe. He found them as he had left them, Sarah in the hospital bed, Lily now awake and coloring quietly beside her. They both looked up as he entered, their faces brightening. "Did you hear that loud noise?" Lily asked innocently. "It sounded like a firecracker." James forced a smile. "Something like that. Nothing to worry about." Sarah's eyes searched his face. "What happened?" she mouthed silently, with a significant glance at Lily. "Later," he mouthed back, then joined them, pulling his chair close to the bed. Lily showed him her drawing, another family portrait, this one featuring a house with a garden and a dog. "That's our new house," she explained matter-of-factly. "After Mom gets better, and that's our dog. We don't have one yet, but we will." The simple certainty in her voice filled James with determination. He would make her vision reality. Dr. Peterson arrived shortly after, his face grave as he pulled James aside. "The police want to speak with you about the incident," he said quietly. James nodded. "I'll talk to them later." Dr. Peterson hesitated, then continued. "There's something else. We've received notification of a potential donor match for Sarah. A car accident victim in Providence. The organ procurement team is assessing viability now. Hope surged in James's chest. How soon would the surgery be? If the lungs are viable within 12 hours, but James, you should know, the success rate for this procedure, given Sarah's condition, is about 60%. Better odds than we had this morning, James replied. He returned to Sarah's bedside, taking her hand in his. The doctor has news, he said simply. As Dr. Peterson explained the potential transplant opportunity, James watched Sarah's face transition from shock to hope to determination. She asked precise questions about the procedure, the recovery, the anti-rejection medications she would need for the rest of her life. And the success rate? She finally asked. Dr. Peterson didn't sugarcoat it. 60%, given your current condition. Sarah nodded, absorbing this. And if we wait? Your condition is deteriorating rapidly. Waiting isn't really an option at this point. Sarah's eyes found James's, seeking reassurance, strength, partnership in this life-altering decision. I'll be here, he promised, understanding the unspoken question, every step of the way. Sarah squeezed his hand, her decision made. Then let's do it. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Nurses came to prepare Sarah for surgery. A child life specialist arrived to help explain to Lily what was happening in terms she could understand. Mom's lungs are very sick, the specialist said, using a stuffed bear with Velcro organs as a visual aid. The doctors are going to give her new lungs that work better. Lily absorbed this with the solemn concentration that James was coming to recognize as her processing face. Will it hurt? She finally bade. Mom will be asleep during the operation, so she won't feel anything, the specialist assured her. Lily nodded, then asked the question clearly weighing most heavily on her mind. Will the new lungs make Mom better? For real? The specialist exchanged a glance with James before answering carefully. The new lungs will give your mom the best chance to get better, but her body will need time to accept them and heal. At 7:30, the transport team arrived to take Sarah to the operating room. Lily was allowed a careful hug, mindful of the IV lines. You be good for Daddy, Sarah whispered, holding her daughter close. I love you more than anything in the world. I love you too, Mommy, Lily replied, her voice small but steady. Your new lungs will make you all better. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she released Lily, turning to James. He bent to kiss her forehead, then her lips, gently. I'll be waiting, he promised. We both will, Lily added firmly, taking James's hand. They watched as the transport team wheeled Sarah away, following as far as the surgical wing doors before a nurse gently stopped them. There's a private waiting room for families of transplant patients, she explained, leading them to a comfortable space with sofas and a small kitchenette. The surgical team will send updates periodically. As the nurse left, Lily looked up at James, her green eyes serious. Is Mom going to die? The direct question caught James off guard. He considered deflecting, but something in Lily's steady gaze told him she deserved honesty. The doctors are doing everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen, he said carefully. But yes, there is a risk. Any big operation has risks. But your mom is strong and she has a lot to live for, especially you. Lily nodded, processing this answer. If Mom dies, will you still be my daddy? The innocent question broke something open in James's chest. Yes, he said fiercely, gathering her into his arms. I will always be your daddy, no matter what happens. Always and forever. Lily relaxed against him, her small body fitting perfectly against his chest. Good, she murmured, because I really like having a daddy. The hours of surgery stretched endlessly. Lily eventually fell asleep, exhausted by the emotional strain. James remained awake, watching the clock, starting at every sound from the corridor. At the 4-hour mark, Dr. Peterson brought an update. The old lungs had been successfully removed, and the surgical team was preparing to implant the donor lungs. At 6 hours, a surgical resident appeared. One lung had been successfully implanted, and they were working on the second. At 8 hours, Dr. Ramirez herself entered the waiting room, still in surgical scrubs, her face etched with fatigue but satisfied. The surgery was successful, she reported, as James gently shifted Lily to lie on the sofa so he could stand. Both lungs have been implanted, and initial function looks good. Relief washed over James in a physical wave, nearly buckling his knees. Can I see her? She'll be heavily sedated for at least 24 hours, Dr. Ramirez cautioned him. But yes, you can see her briefly once she's settled in the ICU. The child will need to wait until Sarah is moved to a regular room. The ICU was a controlled chaos of beeping monitors and hushed voices. A nurse led James to Sarah's bed, surrounded by equipment monitoring every aspect of her vital functions. A ventilator breathed for her, tubes and wires connected to various parts of her body. Her face was pale beneath the ventilator tube, but peaceful. James approached carefully, taking her limp hand in his. "You did it," he whispered. "You got through the surgery. Now all you have to do is heal and come back to us. Lila and I are waiting for you, Sarah. We're going to be a family, the family we should have been all along." Sarah showed no sign of hearing him, but James continued speaking softly, telling her about Lily's drawing of their future home, about the plans already forming in his mind for their life together. Eventually, a nurse touched his shoulder gently. "You should rest, Mr. Donovan. The next 24 hours are critical, but there's nothing you can do right now except take care of yourself and your daughter." James nodded reluctantly. "I'll be back in the morning." He returned to find Lily still sleeping peacefully, watched over by a pediatric nurse. Despite his intention to remain awake, the events of the past 2 days, the emotional upheaval, the confrontation with Mason, the hours of anxious waiting during Sarah's surgery, finally caught up with him. He drifted into an uneasy sleep, his hand resting protectively on the bed near Lily's. He dreamed of a house by the sea with a garden where Lily played, her laughter carrying on the salt-tang breeze. Sarah stood on the porch, healthy and smiling, watching their daughter with love. And James himself was there, not the corporate titan or the Donovan heir, but simply a man with his family, complete at last. The dream was so vivid, so perfect, that when he woke to the gray light of dawn filtering through the hospital window, tears stung his eyes. Yet as he watched Lily's chest rise and fall with each breath, as he thought of Sarah fighting for her life down the hall, James felt a certainty settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As a family. Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open, immediately finding his face. "Daddy, is Mom okay?" "Yes, sweetheart," he answered, smoothing her tousled hair. "Mom got her new lungs, and now she's resting. She's going to be okay." Lily's face broke into a smile of pure joy. "I knew it." The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and roses through the open windows of the beach house. James stood on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. Behind him, the sounds of breakfast preparation, pans clattering, Lily's chatter, Sarah's gentle responses, filled the house with the domestic symphony he'd never known he craved. The past 6 months had transformed all their lives. Sarah's recovery had been arduous. Weeks in the hospital, months of rehabilitation, daily medications to prevent rejection of her new lungs. But each day had brought improvement, her strength returning gradually until finally, last month, Dr. Peterson had pronounced her healthy enough to move to the beach house. James had purchased the property on Cape Cod 3 months ago, after Lily had pointed it out during a weekend drive. "It looks like the house in my drawing," she'd said excitedly. And indeed, the shingled cottage with its wraparound porch and garden overlooking the ocean had seemed meant for them. The door slid open behind him, and Sarah stepped out, wrapped in a light sweater against the morning chill. Her face had filled out, color returned to her cheeks, and though she still tired more easily than before, she moved with increasing confidence. "You're up early," she said, moving to stand beside him at the railing. "Couldn't sleep," James admitted, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Too many thoughts." Sarah leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. "Good thoughts or worrying thoughts?" "Mostly good," he assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Thinking about how much has changed, how close I came to missing all of this." The changes had extended beyond their personal lives. Richard Mason was serving a reduced sentence in a prison hospital, his cancer having progressed to its final stages. James had visited once, a strange meeting where neither man had found adequate words for the damage they had done to each other. Victoria had begun the slow process of rebuilding her relationship with James and establishing one with Lily and Sarah. It was tentative, fragile progress marked by careful Sunday dinners and cautious conversations, but it was progress nonetheless. In Pinnacle Tech, James had stunned the business world by stepping down as CEO, remaining only as chairman of the board, a position that required just a fraction of his former working hours. "Life's too short to miss another day of my daughter's childhood," he told the press simply. "Daddy, Mommy," Lily's voice called from inside. "Pancakes are ready." Sarah smiled, turning in James's arms to face him. "We should go in before she decides to bring them out here." James caught her hand before she could move away. "Sarah, wait. There's something I've been wanting to ask you." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Sarah's eyes widened as he opened it, revealing a platinum band set with a single perfect diamond. "I know we agreed to take things slowly," he said, suddenly nervous despite all they'd been through together. "And I understand if you want to wait longer. But I love you, Sarah. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were lost to me forever. And I love the family we're building together." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as he sank to one knee on the weathered deckboards. "Sarah Matthews, will you marry me? Not because of Lily, not because of the past, but because I want to spend every day of my future with you." Sarah pulled him to his feet, her hands framing his face. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, James." As he slid the ring onto her finger, Lily's voice called again, closer this time. "Are you guys coming? The pancakes are getting cold." They turned to find her standing in the doorway, hands on her hips in mock exasperation, the morning sun setting her blonde curls ablaze like a halo. "We're coming, sweetheart," Sarah called back. "Your dad just asked me to marry him." Lily's eyes widened, then she broke into a grin that could have powered the eastern seaboard. "Finally!" she exclaimed, rushing to throw her arms around both of them. "Does this mean we're really a forever family now?" James lifted her up, holding her between them in a family embrace. "We already were," he told her. "This just makes it official." Over Lily's head, his eyes met Sarah's, finding in them the same wonder and gratitude he felt in his own heart. A second chance, a new beginning, a family that had defied loss, separation, illness, and betrayal to find its way home. Behind them, the sun rose higher, turning the ocean to diamonds and warming the deck beneath their feet. The day was just beginning. Their life together was just beginning. And on the kitchen table, breakfast waited, pancakes growing cold, a small, perfect problem in a life suddenly wonderfully full of ordinary joys.